Hi, I'm Colm Holland. I'm the author of The Secret of The Alchemist, and I'm speaking today on Us People podcast with the wonderful Xavier Ross.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Xavier Rox, and today I'm humbled to have Colm here with me, who is an author, and a motivational speaker. I love motivational speakers. Colm, thank you so much for coming on the Us People podcast.
Xavier, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for having me. I think I mentioned to you earlier, I'm wondering whether I was overage for this podcast, but apparently you're being too gentle.
Overage.
Okay, I'm young in spirit. Let's put it that way.
That's good enough for me.
Okay.
That's absolutely good enough for me. So the first thing I would like to know about you, Colm, is a little bit about your background, where you've come from, where you grew up, and how that influenced you to be the person who you are today.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I was born, people can work my age out now, 1952 in Coventry in the Midlands. Hi to everybody listening from Coventry. We were, as most people know or will remember who anywhere near my age, well, Coventry was severely blitzed during the Second World War. And both my families completely lost their homes. Both homes were bombed out because they lived right in the center of the city. And so they pretty much had to start from scratch again. Of course, there was no insurance for buildings in times of war, and there wasn't much money coming from the government. So it was pretty hard times. So the war ended in 1945. I was born in 1952, so you're looking at 7 odd years later. But we were still rationed, so you couldn't just buy chocolate or sugar in the shop. You actually had ration books with stamps. So we're talking England, less than 60 odd years ago, still. So that was the environment in which I grew up. But so I, like we were talking earlier, like you, I learned to appreciate the value of things. Yeah. It wasn't born with a silver spoon or even a copper spoon in my mouth.
I know how you feel.
I was working when I was only, I think my first job was in the weekends when I was 14 years old. And every summer vacation, even when I was at university and even when I was a school teacher, so I was a high school teacher for a while, I still needed a second job. So I've worked most of my life. That's what I've done. But the momentous thing that really shaped who I was when I was at university, I had an amazing spiritual experience. And if you read my book, The Secret of The Alchemist, at the age of 18, there was definitely a massive transformational moment for me that really put my life on a completely different direction. And I married my childhood sweetheart at the age of 19. So we've got our 50th wedding anniversary coming up in 2 years' time. And I'm really blessed that she was my soulmate, and she too opened her life to unconditional love and to the universe, and so together we walked this path of transformation. So if I had to give a word to the kind of life that I think I've lived up to this point, it's definitely been a journey of transformation, and each of those steps on the way has been a meaningful step in that.
I love that. Talk to me a little bit about who's influenced you in your life, because that plays a big part.
Okay, there's a long list.
That's fine.
So why don't we start with, let's start with Paulo Coelho, the author of the Alchemist, the original book, The Alchemist, which I write about. So, quick story: when I left teaching, I taught high school for about 8-9 years. I went into publishing, and I ended up doing really quite well in the publishing world. I was a marketing director of Harper Collins, which is a huge publishing company globally, owned by Rupert Murdoch. And I was the marketing director in Sydney, Australia, because my wife was Australian originally, so we moved back to Australia, and I was responsible for deciding which books we would publish from the rest of our sister companies around the world. So if San Francisco published a book, it landed on my desk, and I was asked, how many copies of this book do you want in Australia? One day this manuscript landed, literally their mail boy threw it from my office door, and it literally landed on my desk. It was his favorite trick to wake me up on a Friday afternoon, and it landed on my desk, and I looked at it, and it said The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and it was still A4 pages stapled together. Can you believe? With one of those crocodile clip things.
Yeah.
And it had just been translated into English by our company, and nobody had ever heard of Paulo Coelho, including me. And I knew lots of people. I knew Dr. Wayne Dyer. I used to publish his books. I knew Marianne Williamson. I used to publish her stuff. I knew Joseph Campbell. We used to publish his stuff. So who's this Paulo Coelho guy? So I flipped through it, and I realized it was a story, which was great. I thought, oh, I don't normally get to publish fiction from California. This is unusual. Why didn't this come from New York? And then I realized it was actually a spiritual fable. And for all those millions of people out there listening, your millions of listeners, I would guess at least half of them have probably read The Alchemist at some point.
Yes.
I read it on my own. I was apparently the 5th person in the world to read it in English. And I read it, and I rang my colleague in California the following day, and he said, oh, why are you ringing me so early in the morning? And I said, look, I want to talk to you about The Alchemist. He said, well, how many copies do you want? No, normally I'd answer, 2,000, 3,000. And even for a first-time author, not even that usually. And he said, so how many do you want? I said, I want 20,000. And I could hear him spit his coffee out because I rang him. And he said, are you drunk? I said, you're kidding. It's 4 o'clock on a Monday afternoon. Who's drunk at 4 o'clock on a Monday afternoon? I'm still at the office, And he said, okay, why? I said, look, this book is going to be probably the best-selling book that Harper Collins is ever going to publish. And he said, okay, you're normally Mr. Conservative, and now you're being Mr. Extravagant. All right, let me talk to the guys. And he came back and he said, well, look, we think you're right. It may not be as big as you think it's going to be, but yeah, we did a pretty good print run. And the book has sold to date, we're talking 27 years later, the book has sold 85 million copies plus.
I wrote that down, yeah.
If you think that probably every one of those copies has been lent to at least one other person, so you're talking about 160 million people have read it. And then Paulo at some point gave it away for free on the internet. So that's probably another 10, 15, 20 million people straight away read it for free. Then you've got all the Kindle editions.
Yeah.
And then you've got all the library editions. So I've did a quick calculation in my head, and I reckon you're looking at close to 300 million people have probably read this book.
Wow.
Now, I knew it was going to be good. And I knew it was going to be successful.
Wow.
But hey, there's only one other book in the history of our generation, in yours and my lifetime. There is only one other book that's ever sold more copies where the author is still alive. And most people have probably guessed it already. It's J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
And it's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the original. What's interesting is both Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone and The Alchemist are about one subject, and that's alchemy.
Yeah.
Now, that's not a coincidence, in my opinion. That is an omen. It's a sign, if you want to use alchemy terms. It's a sign that we need to pay attention to what alchemy wants to teach us. There's something, there's a secret. That's why I call my book The Secret of the Alchemist. There is a secret in there somewhere, both in the Harry Potter stories and in the story of the alchemist, that we should probably pay attention to if we want to manifest in whatever way we as individuals want to, but in whatever way we want to manifest the degree of success and happiness and fulfillment that we that our heart desires, to put it in in simplest terms. So that influenced me. So when I read that manuscript, I did two things. Not only did I predict that it was going to be a bestseller, and I got it right. Something quite nice happened. Paolo came to Australia soon after we launched the book, and he took me out for a meal and said, "I want to thank you for being so enthusiastic about my book." If you read my, I tell the whole story in my book, but in a nutshell, I thought I was going to get a present. He said, I've got a gift for you, Colm." I said, "Oh, I was thinking a gold Rolex would be nice." I've never, look, you can't. I don't know if anybody can see this, but I still don't have a gold Rolex.
I have to get you one, okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Actually, I could have bought quite a few. I will hasten to it, but he said, "No, I asked my wife and God what I should give you as a reward, as a thank you for
Yeah.
believing in my book." And he said, "The universe told me to spend a day of my time doing my alchemy magic." And I'd never heard of this thing called alchemy magic. I mean, not, and to hear it from the lips of Paolo himself was, I was in a bit of a daze, quite frankly. It didn't really make much impact. And so I've done it. He said, "I've done a day of alchemy magic just for you, Colm, for you personally, so that whatever you want, the universe will give you whatever you want. The only thing is you just need to decide what it is you want." And that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire life, was, do I really know what I want? And do I believe that I can have what I want? Is that possible? Does the universe love me? Does the universe want to help me that much that it cares? Does the universe actually care about me? Little old me. Who am I? I'm nobody as far as, but actually all of those things are lies. Just that thought that I'm nobody, that when we say to ourselves, "Oh, I'm nobody," or we say the opposite, our ego says, "I'm the most important person in the world," is just another way of saying, actually, I really believe I'm nobody, but I'm going to try and bluff my way and
Yeah.
pretend I'm the most important person in the world. They're both saying the same thing. The universe actually looks at each of us as individuals, no matter what we believe in about ourselves, whether we despise ourselves, whether we've rejected, whether we are ashamed of who we are. It makes absolutely no difference whatsoever to the universe. The universe accepts us unconditionally, just as we are. And that, I kind of knew that, but when Paolo believed that I was so important that he should spend a day of his time, and that the universe would conspire with him to make stuff happen, that was one of the most influential things on my life. So the journey I'd made from age 18 to age 40 when I met Paolo had kind of led up to that moment. But from that moment onwards, I definitely made a shift. So I was already on a different track, but there was a dimensional shift in my life after I met Paolo. And then all of the other influencing people that have been in my life up to that point, they all kind of suddenly made sense. it was like, Sergeant Pepper's, the
Yeah.
Beatles, Sergeant Pepper. All those people. That's who they are. They're all people who have influenced the Beatles at some point, or that they've thought, we like these people, and it was like suddenly all those people lined up in my life. So Joseph Campbell, Professor Carl Jung, somebody who most people never heard of, a guy called Dr. Frank Lake, who was very influential to me in my early life, and lots of other people. Bishop Desmond Tutu, who I'd met, for example, lots of people. Suddenly they all lined up, and I almost wanted to make my own Sergeant Pepper's,
Aw.
cover album. I mean, we all should. Maybe we should all do that. We should have an app called Sergeant Pepper's, and you can just drop your own.
Yeah.
Hey, we've just had a brilliant. Oh,
See, look, there you go. Keep it.
Xavier, we've just made $1 million right there.
See, right, we're gonna do one, okay?
We copyright that. Okay, everybody else, you didn't hear that at all. I didn't suggest that. We own it. Sergeant Pepper's, app.com, whatever.
See, you even gave it a website already. See,
We should. I think it's a great idea. Why haven't we ever
I
done
think
that?
so. We're gonna have to talk about that afterwards.
We will.
Okay, I'm happy with that.
So so Paulo Coelho, for that reason, I put at the top of the list. And Carl Jung, I would definitely put second. Those of you who have not read anything about Carl Jung, you probably have heard of archetypes. That's his philosophy. He invented the concept of archetypes, and that's been a massive influence. And in my book, I actually weave together the teachings of Professor Carl Jung together with the story of the alchemist and the journey that I've taken in my own life. So yeah, that's
When you received the gift, how long did it take you to decide what you really wanted?
a while. And so what I do for my day job now is I actually help people who are on journeys of personal transformation. That's what I do. And I do it one-on-one. And I do it sort of remotely because it's a spiritual thing. A psychic thing is more than a counseling session. I don't really do counseling. And the question I always ask the person before I'm able to be of any assistance is exactly that same question, which is, Xavier, do you really know, what is it you want right now for your well-being, for your soul, for your mental health, for your whatever, for your financial situation? Doesn't really, relationships. There's no right answer. That's what I love about that question. And mostly people, I know I've never had the same answer twice. Sometimes people make a list and we look at the list and then I tell them to rip it up because I say, I don't believe you. And I say, can we start again? Only this time, can you be a bit more honest about what you want? Because the ego, and this is what it's interesting about the ego, and I love the ego. I think the ego is one of our most valuable possessions. The problem is it's a really, really naughty child, the ego. It misbehaves all the time and just, constantly needs training. So the ego's got all, the ego's all. If you ask the ego what do you want, it's got its list ready. It's here. Here's my list. Ego knows exactly what I want to be rich. I want to be famous. I want to be the most popular musician in the world. I want to be the best-selling writer in the world. Easy. No,
Yeah.
Ego has no problem with that. But the ego, of course, doesn't always deliver what we want, or it does it really badly and does it in a way that can be really quite destructive as well.
That's true.
So the ego doesn't really have our well-being, our whole well-being on its agenda. And so one of the things the alchemists, because there is actually an ancient wisdom called alchemy. It actually exists. Most people think it's just like a fictional Harry Potter made up. No, it's real, guys. So, sorry to burst the bubble here, but it really exists, and it goes back millennia to Egypt. And in my book, I explain just a brief history of where it came from and what those guys and women, men and women, by the way,
Yeah,
believed. And most of us understand at least the concept that they wanted to turn lead into gold,
that's correct. Yeah,
or they wanted to transform, influence the world around them in some way, to their advantage, so that their king would be rich, or whatever. So there's all of those things. What actually happened was that, up until the times of the Greek Empire, the times of Alexander the Great, those of you who didn't fall asleep in history and were paying attention for some of the time will remember there was a guy called Alexander the Great. There was a film made, I think Brad Pitt was in it or something, I don't know. And he had a library. He actually had a library that had the largest collection of alchemical writings and teachings in the world. And it accidentally caught fire, believe it or not, thanks to Julius Caesar and Cleopatra, who had a bit of a tiff. And anyway, you can read the history. But what happened after, so as a result of that, alchemy kind of got lost a bit. So there were just a few strains. And my first real appreciation that alchemy actually had something to offer us as individuals today was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. So Paulo, in the introduction to one of the editions of The Alchemist, says that he became an avid student of alchemy. But the branch, alchemy has several branches. The branch of alchemy that he chose was the very fundamentalist, very symbolic, very studious, very rigid. You have to say this chant at this time of the day, and you've got to be facing the moon in this direction, and all these rituals, and there's a sort of a bit of black magic going on in there as well. And he says it almost destroyed his life. He nearly wrecked. He nearly self-destructed by going down that path. So when he came to his senses, as he calls it, he backtracked, and but he knew there was something in alchemy that was really precious and life-giving and positive and could change lives for the better. And so he went off down the school of Arabic alchemy, which teaches that everything is in the heart, and that we need to listen to the heart, and we need to be at one with the universe, and we need to listen to the universe, and that we need to study the omens and synchronicity and the good things that happen. And we need to allow one essential element into our lives. And this is exactly what I did when I was 18, which is why alchemy resonates with me so much, is we have to understand that the universe is controlled actually by this thing called unconditional love. That love is the ultimate power in the universe. We'd love to think that other things are in control, including ourselves. We'd love to think that this political party is in control, or we'd love to live that this country is in control, or we'd love to live, believe this philosophy is in control, or this religion's in control. That's all valid stuff. But even within those elements, within those entities, when you dig down at the things that really make a difference, a positive difference to the world and to life, what you'll discover is the core element in all of those things is unconditional love. That's what transforms life, and has been transforming life since the formation of the universe and the cosmos, and our own evolution and our own progress as a species. Look at us, amazing. Look at me. Look at you talking to each other over there. I mean, this is just what a species. Incredible, amazing what we've achieved. Incredible. And so, what got us to this point was down through the millennia, down through all the hundreds of millions of years, unconditional love has been enforcing and empowering individuals and us as a species. And one of the things I wanted when I was 18 years old, and I'm pleased to say a lifetime's work, I believe I've reached a good point of this, and that is we should be able to enter in what I call true empowerment.
I was just going to ask you that.
Ask me the question. What was the question you were going to ask
My
me?
question was, talk to me about empowerment, because that was my next one for you.
Okay. So this is an interesting topic. How many of us feel empowered? And how do we measure that empowerment? That's the question that I began asking when I was 18 years old, and I've been asking my whole life ever since. I'm going to tell you what empowerment isn't first, and then let's talk about what we think empowerment. And please, Sally, just butt in, and if you've got something on your list, then please
Yeah,
say it.
sure.
What it isn't is the power to manipulate others. It's not that. It's not the power to control others. It's not that. It's not the power to create wealth at the expense of others. It's not that. It's not the power to use selfishly the good things that the world and the creation has given us, and the earth has given us, to our own selfish ends, to the detriment of others. It's not any of those things. It's not me stepping on you to get to where I want to get to. It's not you lording it over me through the rules and regulations that you want to in place over me, so that it makes you feel better about yourself, and so on and so on. It's none of those things. So what it is the ability to actually, as a human, to love unconditionally those in our sphere. That's empowerment. And that doesn't mean that you need to accept the abuse of others. When Jesus, who I often quote because he said lots of good things, so did Buddha, so did Krishna, so did but Jesus just happened to be in a book called the Bible that I've read a few times, and he said, love your enemies, do good to those who hurt you, pray for those who abuse you, sort of thing. Turn the other cheek, and one of the things that people have taken away from that is that you're just meant to become a doormat and everybody can just walk all over you. And no, that's a complete misreading
Yeah,
of what he said.
yeah,
What he meant was that when you are abused, you should use the power of love to heal the abuse, to overcome the abuse. So the power of love is greater than any abuse. And there are amazing stories down through the years, aren't there, of people in concentration camps, people growing up in childhoods where they were just unspeakably treated by people. We can't even go there. It's too painful to talk about, really. Who found miraculously, Oprah Winfrey, for example,
oh yeah, yeah,
miraculously found the power of love in her terrible upbringing and childhood trauma to become the sort of empowered person that she is today, and so on. She's just one of many, many, many thousands and thousands and thousands of people who tell that story. So empowerment, true empowerment, is actually about owning our own well-being and caring so much for ourselves that we are in a condition to be able to help other people.
okay. But another thing is, what about, you talk about unconditional love, but I know a lot of people don't understand what unconditional love is. The reason why I say that, because people, especially today for some reason, love with condition.
Sure.
Would you be able to talk to us a little bit more about what unconditional love is compared to what conditioned love is?
Yeah. Do you mind if I just read a couple of lines from my book?
Of course you can.
Because I've sort of summarized it there in a way that I think people would find quite concise. And it's in my author's notes, and I won't read the whole thing. But some people refer to the power in the universe as spirit. Some people refer to it as God. Some people, the goddess, whatever. I actually have given that power the name love. I actually,
Yeah.
because
You gave it a capital L.
a capital L,
Yeah.
it deserves a capital L
Yeah.
because it is it's a personality. It has a characteristic, and therefore, whilst I don't believe that it's a person, sitting on a cloud anywhere as such, it's actually within us, it's around us, and but it has a character. So this is a love quote that cares beyond measure. It never gives up. It constantly wants the best for another. It forgives and never judges, is full of compassion and mercy, and feels the pain and joy of others deeply. Now, if you don't know that for yourself, it's pretty hard to love anybody else in that way. So I have this thing that I say to lots of people is that the most selfless thing that you can do is allow love to love you unconditionally.
I think that's one of the hardest things for people to do.
It's the hardest thing that I've ever had to do.
Yeah.
I've struggled with it most of my life. I've struggled with my own inward blame, my own inward shame, my own inward condemnation, my own inward sort of.
Did you feel that you wasn't worthy
Oh,
of the
totally.
love?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. No. I'm me and 98% of the population. I think at some point, we feel that people's self-esteem um, is probably one of the most critical issues we face as a generation. And the only cure, if there is such a word, and that's not really the right word, but the only cure for that is we have to take a journey. And it's an inward journey. And
The beauty is within the journey, I believe.
it's an inward journey. And that's the story of The Alchemist with the main character, Santiago, the shepherd boy.
Yeah.
He's in the mythology of the story, he's going on a journey to the pyramids to find his greatest treasure. But actually, that it's obviously that's an inner a metaphor for an inner journey that we all need to take. And the good news is that we don't actually have to do it alone.
Yes.
One of the organizations I've never, thankfully, ever had to join it, but one of the organizations I have huge respect for is Alcoholics Anonymous. Anybody who's abusively used alcohol or drugs, I would strongly recommend that you pay them a visit if that's something you're struggling with. They teach some really, really amazing things. But the key thing about alcoholics is that you're not on your own.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did when I realized that I needed help, and let me tell you why this is interesting. I remembered the point in my life when I wasn't empowered. I remember it as if it was yesterday. And what would happen is the more I actually tried to be kind and generous and forgiving and non-judging of others, I actually found the less able I was to do it, because there was this dragon. There was this other me that I don't know where it was, but it would get triggered. Somebody would say something, or somebody would do something, or it could be the smallest thing, and suddenly I found myself getting angry for no reason. Why was I getting angry? And that was the driving situation that made me personally say, I don't want to be this person. I don't want to be reacting to this, reacting to that. I'm hurting people around me. I'm hurting the people I love. What's that about? Why am I doing? I don't want to do that. And lots of guys, for some, I mean, look at domestic abuse that we're, the statistics of domestic abuse. This is the core of most of that. And then, when alcohol gets involved or drugs get involved, it just gets worse. And so I actually went on a journey, and I managed to find a couple of people to help me. So I went on what I realized years later was an alchemy journey.
Aha.
And it begins with, and I know you've got it probably on your list of questions. So do you want to ask me the question?
No, go for it. No, I'll go for it. I love it. I like that it flows naturally.
So there's this thing called the dark night of the soul.
Yep.
And you'll hear it talked about all over the place, and everybody goes, "Oh, what's the dark night of the soul?" I think it's when somebody dies and you feel sad and you go into grief and your world falls apart, or you suddenly get the sack at work and you've no longer got a reason, or your boyfriend leaves you, or your girlfriend leaves you, or something happens, and you end up feeling bereft and empty, and you then quickly trying to find things to fill the vacuum and whatever, and that's when people do self-destructive things, which isn't good. So what I did, I actually decided, which is really unusual, I've discovered. I thought it was quite normal at the time, but I've just decided it's quite unusual. I actually decided to actually go into the dark night of the soul voluntarily.
Whoa.
So I resigned my job as a high school teacher. I was very fortunate. I had some people who were prepared to support me and my family at the time, some very caring people. And I got a very simple job. I ran a little print press on my own, so I didn't have to talk to anybody. I didn't have to do anything. And I literally allowed my unconscious self to have a voice. So Professor Carl Jung, who I mentioned earlier, believes that our psyche is divided into two, not equal parts, but two parts. There's the conscious part of our life when that's what we're using now as we listening to this podcast, we're talking to each other, and then we do the stuff, clean our teeth, go to work, do our jobs, whatever we do. That's the conscious part. But Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, of course, said that the biggest part of our psyche, 80%, is probably unconscious. And it becomes like this cellar in our mind. And in that cellar, we throw and accumulate all the pain and all the wounds and all the abuse and all the bad stuff and all the things about ourselves we'd rather forget. The things we did that we regret, and I don't really want to admit to that, then bury that as well. And, there's things I knew were wrong and I shouldn't have done, and stick those in there. And guess what? The cellar just keeps filling up. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go floating down the Thames somewhere. That it's a watertight cellar, the unconscious, and it builds up and it gets filled up, and occasionally it has to break out. It's a bit like a pressure cooker. It says, well, actually, I'm not very happy about this thing that hasn't been dealt with. Oh, look, there's this situation you're in now. Oh, I've got something to say on that. So the dragon or the unconscious voice, and then suddenly you hear yourself saying stuff and you go, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that to that person. Oh my, where did that come from? Well, it came from the unconscious. That's where it came from. And then you're begging for forgiveness and apologizing like, I didn't mean to say that to you. I didn't mean to call you those names. I don't know what came over me. I don't know what came over me. When you find yourself saying, I don't know what came over me, guaranteed it's the unconscious breaking out saying, I want attention, please. Can you give me Colm, can you give me some attention, please, here? Because you've ignored me for so long. I want some attention. And so if we completely, continuously ignore that voice, then we usually end up pretty unhappy and pretty miserable. And we can go to our grave full of regret So I decided I didn't want to do that. I actually wanted to live a really fruitful, positive, loving life. So I went into the cellar, and it wasn't pleasant. Well,
How long, how long has it taken you to, when you went into the cellar,
yeah,
to went out of the cellar? How long did that take you to?
a year.
Wow.
So I don't recommend it. Don't do it on your own. This is not, on TV they say, viewers, please don't try this at home. Um, get help. Find help. Get some. If you're going to do it, if you're not happy with the way that you treat yourself and how you treat others, then yeah, absolutely get help. There are plenty of people who will help you. There are counselors that can work with you who understand exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But the first step is asking for help. Number one, tick. Can you please help me? I'm not happy with the way this is my life is going. Can I get some help here? And every journey is different. So the journey that I took won't be the same the journey that everybody takes at all. Um, what I did discover, I won't bore you with all the mess because it's pretty smelly anyway. You don't want to, you don't want to hear about all that. Is you've got your own dirty washing, I'm sure of it. You don't want to hear mine.
We all
No,
have.
you don't want to see mine. um, so but there was this little boy. I discovered this little boy, this little Colm, and boy, was he angry. He was pretty. I'm telling you. I mean, I thought I'd heard some language, but he had he had some choice language that I wouldn't have even used. But so quite often the the origins of the wounds and the pain that we feel originates in our childhood at some point or at some stage. That's quite often for most people. And psychiatrists, psychologists call that the inner child. It's one view of the psyche that there is within each of us a wounded child. So I found mine, and he was pretty angry, and I did then engage probably for the first time in my life in a spiritual exercise. So I could just share with you my spiritual exercise if that might help somebody listening. So my spiritual exercise was this: that I imagined this wounded child who was very angry, and I put him in a chair in my mind. I sat him in a chair, and I said, "Right, you can tell us anything you want to tell us. I want to hear why you're so angry." So the adult me was inviting the child me to have the voice that he so desperately wanted. But in my mind, I also imagined that unconditional love was accepting and hearing and accepting everything that he had to say. So there was nothing wrong. There was nothing he could say that was wrong. There was nothing that he could say that he would get punished for. There was nothing that he could think or do that was going to get any retribution from anybody or anything at all. So, first time in his life, he was free emotionally to express. And that went on for several months. I'd take a bunch of sandwiches. I found a little church somewhere in the countryside near where I worked. I just used to go and sit in the churchyard, and when there was nobody around, and I would just voice what that inner child was thinking. And if anybody had come around the corner, they would have called for the police because they would have thought I was strangling somebody. it was it was pretty horrific stuff. It's certainly not something I wasn't going to do at home, that's for sure, because I had a family and kid. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but I got through it, and
Oh.
eventually he felt heard. Um, and
What did that do for you spiritually after he felt like he was heard?
empty.
Wow.
So the dark night of the soul, the end of the dark. How do you know when you've reached the end of the dark night of the soul? Well, everything that you previously thought was who you were, the ego, no longer exists. So it's almost like having to rebuild your life. Only this time you're building from a foundation of love. So the irony is that when you're falling in this dark night of soul, and all the things, all the meaning of life is being stripped away, and you feel desolate and empty, and so on. As you begin to land, it's not a crash landing. What you'll discover is it's a soft landing, and the thing you're landing in is 10 times more valuable than anything that you've just let go of or lost or whatever. Now, some people experience this when a loved one dies, as I said earlier, or you lose your job, or there's some traumatic experience. When those things happen, yeah, absolutely get help and talk about what I'm talking about. Ask them, do you know about this stuff? Because it's as traumatic as it is, and it might seem, it is actually a good opportunity to use the grief as a way of, revisiting these parts of the psyche. So that's called the black phase in alchemy, and it's called black because it's dark. There's no light. It just feels you're walking around in the dark. There are other names for it. If you study alchemy, there's lots of different names for that process, but that's one of them. And then what will happen is, without any effort, love and alchemy will lead you into a second phase, and it's called the white phase. And the white phase represents light. And love will begin to replace the darkness with like a purification of who you are. So it will illuminate. A new light will begin to appear out of your own soul, out of your own heart, that you never imagined. And things that, like trying to help other people and be nice to other people and be kind and forgive other people, whereas before they were an immense, arduous task, what you'll find is they actually come quite naturally. Because you've allowed love to love you at that point, then it's possible that actually that love now is the foundation of who you are. In Jungian, Carl Jung's terms, this is a process that he called individuation, which is an interesting word. It's hard to understand in a way, but individuation is becoming the real true self.
I understand that.
So some religions encourage us to become like somebody else who's perfect. That's not what this is. This is becoming us. I'm going to become me because I'm unique and I've got a unique gift to bring to the world. So the soul of the world, our collective experience together, is nourished, according to the alchemist, is nourished when we make that inner journey to discover the true self. And in the story of the alchemist, those of you that have read it will remember that the main character Santiago ends up in this shop called the Crystal. Yeah, the Crystal Shop. Do you want to ask me about the Crystal Shop? Is that on your list? So yeah.
I've got loads on my list, but you're going through them nice and easy. So let's talk about the crystal shop, because I'm a big fan of crystals anyways.
Okay. Now, the Crystal Shop is not what we have in Glastonbury. I live near Glastonbury, by the way. Every second shop in Glastonbury is a crystal shop. We've got quartz crystals, we've got cobalt crystals, we've got sapphire crystals, we've got all kinds of crystals. And they've all got these amazing properties, none of which I ever understand, and I'm totally dependent on the people who run those shops to tell me why this is going to be good for me. I've got a lovely, great big crystal in my driveway, and apparently it's doing this amazing work for me. And it seems to work, so I'm not knocking it at all. The Crystal Shop, however, is cut glass in the story of The Alchemist. Do you remember Granny or Granddad? It's got that whiskey tumbler that's made out of cut glass, or that old decanter that nobody uses anymore. It's made of cut glass. It's on the mantelpiece.
Oh,
Yeah, and the cut glass bowls. They used to
yeah.
give you it when you got married and stuff like that. Nobody does that stuff anymore. But that's the crystal. And the interesting thing about crystal glass, when you hold it up to the light, it creates a fabulous rainbow. It
Yes.
reflects color, refraction actually, and it breaks light down. The key ingredient in good quality glass crystal is lead. So that's why Paulo Coelho wrote about Santiago going to a crystal shop, because what he starts to do is clean the glasses in exchange for food, because he's got nothing. So Santiago, the character in the story, has just been through hell. He's just been robbed. All the money he saved from the sale of his sheep's gone. He doesn't speak the language. He's in a foreign country. We've all been there. We've all felt like that, first day of high school, whatever, that's how he feels. And he goes into the crystal shop and starts cleaning the glasses, and customers come in and start buying the glasses. And the merchant says, yeah, you can stay. So that's a metaphor for this enlightenment that I was talking about earlier. So the more he allows the light to cleanse him, to purify him, the wealthier he becomes, the wiser he becomes. He begins to understand his heart. He begins to take control of the doubts and the fear of his heart. And that all happens. The merchant is representing his heart in the crystal shop. And so that is a process we will go through. And there are some therapies that you can use to help with that. I used a therapy called rebirthing. I haven't seen it being offered for years since my wife and I did it 30 odd years ago, or probably more, actually 35 years ago. John Lennon did it in Los Angeles, because John Lennon had some childhood issues that he was trying to deal with. Gwyneth Paltrow,
Wow.
have you seen this thing she's got called Goop on Netflix? There's a documentary series called,
Oh.
oh yeah. So Gwyneth Paltrow has got this brand called Goop, which is her initials, Gwyneth something something Paltrow, and it's all to do with health and wellness. And there's a great little documentary series if you're interested
Look, yeah, I'm
on
definitely
Netflix. And they go to Hawaii and they eat magic mushrooms, and they have this hallucinatory experience. I've never done that.
You should try
Oh,
it.
I should. The
Yeah.
mushrooms I eat just don't seem to work. I'm eating the wrong mushrooms. Sainsbury's mushrooms just aren't cutting it at all. But she does, and they go and they do this trip, and we did it with hyperventilation. So I worked with a doctor who had developed the technique, and so I was able to revisit my childhood. I was able to go back in my own sort of it's a form of self-hypnosis, and you can recreate the feelings of early childhood. And then in the context that I was working in it, the people around me cared for me and helped me to allow love to heal those experiences. So that for me was the white phase. And what I discovered is that I was one of the original Harry Potters. And this was before J.K. Rowling had written Harry Potter. So my mother, bless her heart, she's passed now, bless her, was diagnosed with epilepsy, severe epilepsy, but for a while it went undiagnosed. And I was a toddler at the time, and we were at home alone. My father was at work, and she would begin to have a fit. Those of you who've ever seen anybody having an epileptic, it's quite scary, and they can really hurt themselves.
Yeah.
To protect me, she used to lock me in the cupboard under the stairs. And if you know the Harry Potter stories, that's where he ended up at some point. So she'd lock me in there to protect me, and then I'd hear all this terrible screaming and commotion going on outside the cupboard, and I was terrified. No, literally. But I buried those memories. I buried them, and then now I can see them. It's vivid, so the therapy helped me to revive that, and that just opened my understanding of why I was the way I was, because I was extremely confused about what love looked like.
Yeah.
So the person who was normally loving and caring and very affectionate towards me would become this monster through no fault of her own. Luckily, a neighbour heard it one day and called an ambulance and the doctor, and she was eventually treated, and they controlled it for the rest of her life with drugs and so on. So it was a good outcome in the end. But whilst I thought life had moved on, the damage had been done. It was a weird kind of abuse. I wasn't particularly physically abused or sexually abused. It was an emotional traumatic abuse, and I don't know how long it went on for. It's that I can't say, but that was my experience, and I know hundreds and hundreds of people whose childhood experience are much worse than that. That's quite mild compared to things that people have experienced. So that was a real healing for me to discover that and to know that I could move on.
Yeah.
That was liberating. That was my white phase. That was my crystal shop phase. And then in alchemy, there's a third phase, which is having allowed love to bring you through these transformative stages, whatever they might be for you. The final stage is that you can actually become an alchemist. So I actually identified myself, and I've yet, I should get a business card. I haven't got a business card. I should get a business card just for fun. It says alchemy practitioner, and everybody's going to go, well, he's really weird. Oh, good my goodness, this guy's full. He's lost it, getting old. Must be dementia or something he's going to do.
No, not stop it.
So, yeah, so I realized that what Paolo was actually trying to say through the book, The Alchemist, and other blogs, things he'd written in his blog and others, and things I'd studied, and so he was actually saying that we can become alchemists in our generation. And I'm starting to meet them all over the place. I mean, look at you. You're an alchemist. You're a natural alchemist. I mean, you're amazing. The transition that you've made in your life and the ambitions that you've fulfilled. I mean, these are incredible. I've had to work much harder. I think I'm not a natural alchemist. I think I have to work quite hard at it. But what can an alchemist do? So an alchemist can do something quite amazing. This is where Harry Potter. I've got a lot of respect for the Harry Potter stories because, okay, they're just fables. It's mythological stuff. But actually in real life we can perform miracles.
Yeah, I believe that.
Magic, whatever you want to call it, alchemy, magic, whatever. And why do I believe that? Because when I look back on that night in the restaurant, when Paolo said to me, I spent a day of my time doing my alchemy magic for you, I just thought he was thinking, it was symbolic. It was some sort of a phrase just to describe. I didn't actually think, oh, what did he do? I should have thought, well, I should have said to him, I wish I had it. So what did you do? What did you do for a day? Did you just walk around thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice if Colm could do this? Oh, wouldn't it be nice if Colm? No, he actually performed some magic. So I've spent the last 15 years of my life learning how to do alchemy magic. And that's called the red phase. So I've come through the black, the white. Now I'm in the red phase, yeah, and we can all enter into that phase. So, how do I know when I need to, when I can become an alchemist? Well, you'll know, you will know when the time. But it's got some signs. So if you want a few helpful signs that I can give you to know when. So let's say you've been on a bit of a spiritual journey and you've been self-aware, you've dealt with some things, and you've visited some pain, and you've got help, and you've worked stuff out, and and you reach a point where you're relatively quite happy with your life. The symptom to look for is a complacency begins to set in. And in the story of Santiago, in the original Alchemist story, he arrives at the oasis, he falls in love with Fatima, he's got a romantic relationship which hasn't been consummated, but he knows it's real. And he's learned to listen to his heart. He's starting to connect with the universe. There's this story of two hawks fighting and how he saves the oasis from a tribe of bandits and all this stuff. And then suddenly, just when he's thinking, okay, I'm all right now, I've arrived, comfortable, I can sit back in my armchair and I can pontificate on the universe, and God's in heaven and I'm on earth and everything's good, and I'm getting a bit bored already. So what's my life really all? Is this it? As it says in that film, is this as good as it gets? One of my favorite movies, As Good as It Gets. Is this it? Or is there something more? And then this guy arrives on horseback, thundering hooves through the desert, stops in his tracks just right at Santiago's feet, and is an Arab guy with an Arab dress on, and he's got a hawk on his shoulder, and he's got this dark hood, and he's got this scimitar sword, and it's razor sharp, and he stops and he looks at Santiago and says, "Who are you?" And he basically said, "Well, I'm here. Are you here to kill me because I've saved the oasis?" He said, "No, I'm here to test you. And I'm going to help you take a thing called the Great Test. Because if you really ultimately want to reach this treasure that your dream says you should be searching for, if you think you've arrived, then you're mistaken." So I hit that at age 40. That was my alchemy moment. And the alchemist on the horse for me was Paulo Coelho. When he said to me, "You've got to identify what you really want," that's the alchemist saying, "You know what? You actually haven't arrived, have you? You know you haven't arrived. You know your heart telling you. And if you ignore it now, this is your one chance." So this is the thing I learned about alchemy. The alchemist will only appear once. I mean, you get lots of chances to transform. You get lots of chances to progress, and that's all fine. But in most of our lives, the alchemist will only ever appear once. And it's at that point we have to make the most conscious, because we're in a place where we can actually make a conscious decision. We're no longer pulled this way and pulled that way and influenced by this person or that person or this group or this philosophy or whatever. We are in charge of our own life. And that's when the alchemist will come and say, "You've got the power. Are you going to use it? Are you going to use the power that you've inherited,
How do you know when your alchemist is in front of you to ask you that question?
Your heart will tell you. And if your heart, you can't look for them, he or she or they or whatever the alchemist is that's going to come to you. They will come, and there will be a challenge in that encounter. Now, it might be a documentary you've just watched on TV, it might be a book you've just read, but it's like somebody's just slapped you across the face and said, "Wake up." And you're going to go, yeah, okay, yeah, I get this. This is one of those moments in my life, isn't it? And you just know, you'll say that to yourself. Now, a lot of people will never, ever, ever have this experience. So if the people that are asleep, that haven't been on the journey, that haven't even started the journey, who aren't interested in self-awareness, aren't interested in true empowerment, aren't interested in transforming and being able to perform miracles, that all of this, they're missing out. it's just not going to happen for them. We all have the opportunity at some point in our life to begin this journey. That's not the point I'm talking about. So the point that I think every individual has the opportunity to take the journey of self-enlightenment at some point. This is the people who are advanced. This is for people who've been on the journey, because those are the people that will hear their heart say, this is the moment. And it will challenge your status quo. It will challenge your comfort zone. It will challenge this nice little comfortable world that you've built around yourself, and it will feel like a major sacrifice. So in the story of Santiago, when he meets the alchemist says, so you can stay here in the oasis if you want. That's fine. There's no there's no compulsion. Nobody's going to make you do anything. It's your choice. It's just that the universe sent me to help you if you want it. And that's what will happen. So somebody will come along, and it will be your opportunity to take their help if you want it. All they're going to do is help you to take a grasp, to take hold of what you actually already know and use it, actually put it into action, rather than being just a theory or a feeling, to actually turn it into something positive. And now there are people who are alchemists without them even knowing it, who do this all the time, and I have such admiration for those people. They're so fortunate that they don't have to do the hard work. They just do it. And I live in permanent admiration of those people. But there are those of us that need an alchemist to say, "Hey, this is it. Do you want to do this or not? Do you want your real treasure? I can take you to the pyramid if you want, and I know exactly where your treasure is, and I can show you how you can become an alchemist if you want. Or are you just going to sit back and live a comfortable life from now on? And it's up to you." So he makes the decision to go carry on the journey, which isn't very far. It's just down the road. He doesn't even realize it. It's just down the road. It's literally around the next corner, around the next sand dune, almost. He has no idea how close he is, and that's true for all of us. We don't realize how close we are to our true empowerment. It's literally on our doorstep, literally back where we began. And he faces the great test. So there's this one of the things about when you do when you make the final decision that you want to have your own power, there will be a test. Even with COVID, even when there's no exams in the hall, this test is, they haven't scrapped this one. This is
They can't.
No, they haven't. They can't touch this one. This is between you and the universe. And they meet another warring tribe, which is symbolic of the the stuff that happens in the world around us. The bad stuff comes across our path, and it's not all good. So that happens to them, and their lives are threatened again. And they say, well, we're going to kill you. We're going to take your treasure, whatever gold give us the gold in your pouches, to the alchemist and to Santiago, who's a boy, and we're going to kill you. And the alchemist says, well, before you kill us, you might just want to see what this boy can do. And they say, oh, what can this boy do? And well, he can destroy this camp that you've got here just using the wind. In fact, he can turn himself into the wind and destroy your camp. And the boy's sitting there going, kidding. Wait, which boy? Oh, that one. No, me. Oh, are you serious? I've got no idea how to do that. And he turns to the alchemist and says, why did you say that I'm an alchemist and I can do that? And he said, because I am an alchemist, said the alchemist. I actually know how to turn myself in the wind. This is your chance to prove that you can do it. And that's what the universe will say. The universe will give us that moment, that test, to prove to ourselves that we can harness the power that we now have, and we can make a difference and shift yet to another dimension in our psychic life. And there is no coming back from that new
The one
dimension.
thing I want to ask you is, how does fear step into this, because that was one of the questions I did have. Is so your alchemist comes, gives you the opportunity for you to take the next step to go to the evolve, basically evolve. But when fear comes into that and you're scared, how does that impact it?
Yeah, no, great question. The best example I've ever given, I've ever heard of this is something that Will Smith. I love Will Smith, the actor. I'm gonna revert to Will Smith's story. I'm gonna borrow his story. So Will Smith was given a gift by his family for his birthday to do a skydive, and he's terrified of heights. And so he tells the story. You can see it on YouTube. Um, so on the days leading up to doing the skydive, he's in his motel room the night before, and he's absolutely sort of riveted to the chair with fear. He's completely terrified, and he goes to bed and he dreams fearful dreams. You know, and he gets up in the morning and he's in the shower, and he's shaking with fear. He's just his whole body is like traumatized just at the thought of even going in the plane. And he drives in his car and he's can't drive. Somebody else has to drive. He's so fearful, and he gets to the plane and he's hanging onto the seat in the plane for his dear life, and the plane takes off and he's still gripped with fear and so on. And then eventually he gets to gets the parachute on, and the guy's with him, hanging on to him, because he's not doing a solo jump, it's a companion jump. And
Yeah.
and they're standing on the edge of the thing, and when he stands on the edge of the thing, it dawns on him that this is the only moment he really needs to be frightened.
Yeah, that's true.
He didn't need to be frightened in the shower, because nothing was going to happen to him in the shower. He didn't need to be frightened in his motel room, because nothing was going to happen in the motel room. Or driving the car, or getting on the plane. What was the point of all that fear? The only moment he needed to be fearful was this second when he's about to jump. I love that story, because most of us live our life in that fear all the time, don't we? And so in
That's
the
really
story of the alchemist, Paolo says something really important. You need to tell your heart that the fear of something bad happening or something terrible happening is worse than the event happening itself.
Yeah, I agree.
And Will Smith finally says, if you really can't conquer your fears, then do what I do, he said, and that's do it scared. I love that. He should get a Nobel Prize for that saying. It's one of the most important things we all need to hear, and that really sums it up. That there is a courage that even in us, even in our worst fears, that exists within us, and we can do this thing. So
Yeah.
Santiago is so fearful that he's just going to be slaughtered by these bandits, but he says, okay, let me just see if I can find this courage. And he starts to talk to the sand, the desert, and he talks to the wind, and he talks to the sun, and he starts to have a conversation with the universe and say, you're good at this, and you do this. You, the wind, are able to do that, and sun, you give us life, and But it dawns on him at that point. He has this revelation as he's having this conversation with the universe, that there's one thing that we as human beings can do and have control over that nothing else in the universe has. We have the power and the control of unconditional love at our fingertips. And that is the empowerment that Santiago is looking for. And then so he has this enlightened moment where he realizes that the force and power of unconditional love exists within his own heart. He thought it was out there somewhere. And most of us do think that, it's out. The power we need is out there somewhere. And the power we need is actually in here. And the moment you realize that, then we can do anything, pretty much. And so he does. And the wind blows and the camp's destroyed. And when the wind finally settles down, he's standing on the other side of the camp. and the bandits literally pay them to leave because this is a very powerful omen, and they don't want to upset the gods. And so they think, okay, these are gods. We need to be nice to these guys. Yeah, otherwise we're all going to be. But that's it. So we, it's not pleasant, and fear. The thing we need to say to our hearts, I think, is that the fear of something bad happening is worse than the actual event itself. Um, you see people all the time, in times of grief when they lose loved ones, and this incredible courage, just
Yeah.
yeah, just amazing, comes out of. I've seen it in my own sphere, in my family, and so on, and it's just amazing. So in the midst of the worst that you think can possibly happen, there is this light of power of love and courage. And the amazing thing is that we can own that day to day.
Yeah.
We can wake up every morning saying, "Wow, I I've got this power. I'm amazing. What amazing things can I do? What can I do today to shift my world, to help the people that I love, and to help those around me, and to deal with the people who don't treat me right, and how can I shift that um, to a different level?" And so Santiago realizes that a boy, just a boy, can perform miracles. And when each of us, when the girl within us, when the boy within us realizes that we are one with the universe, and we can be this creative person, we can nurture the world around us, then that's why I wrote my book, really, to say, yeah, this is what The Alchemist is all about, and yeah, this is what you can do, and why not? What's stopping you? There's nothing in the way. Yeah, the whole universe. When we dream that dream, as Paolo says in The Alchemist, when we dream that dream, the whole universe will conspire. I just love that phrase. The whole universe will conspire to help make it happen for us. Wow. That's one of my biggest wow thoughts ever. That really, have I really, as I said at the beginning of what we were, am I really that important to
You
yeah,
are.
to the scheme of things? Yes. And, and,
Yeah.
the, and the world's greatest lie is that you're not, and that your fate is determined, and that who are you to even contemplate following your dream? Who are you to even just imagine that you could become something or someone that can be a contributor to the world around you? Well, it's true, you can absolutely, and that's alchemy. That is what alchemy teaches. So
I'm sure I'm not the only one who has learned something today from doing that and knowing and finding out that even I'm an
you
alchemy,
are an alchemist. You are.
an alchemist
You are.
myself. Yeah.
If I had a certificate, I'd put it in the post.
Oh,
So is a wonderful. I'm going to put it with a couple of exclamation marks here. Alchemist, sign column, because
oh,
yeah, you are. I mean, look at what you're doing. Look at you here today doing this with me, because you really care about
yeah.
people, and you want people to know what's out there, what their life could be like, which is amazing.
And you can have anything. And I think sometimes people try to stop you from being the best that you can be because they haven't found that within
Sure,
themselves.
absolutely.
And that's the part that I find disappointing. That someone will want to use their energy that they could be doing something positive with on themselves to try and stop you from doing something positive for yourself. And it happens all the time. I see it all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, me too. Yeah,
I
yeah,
see it.
absolutely. It breaks. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that's probably why I wanted to be a school teacher. Why I wanted to be a high school teacher. I actually worked in a pretty deprived area. I won't mention any names, but I did work in a pretty deprived area because I actually even at that young age, I actually believe that people could be helped to become, to improve their own circumstances if they just had
Mm.
the right knowledge and the right encouragement to take the right steps. So it wasn't easy, and I don't know if I did a particularly good job at it, but
I'm sure you did.
yeah, I don't know. But I've certainly tried to make up for it since.
Oh,
Yeah,
another question I do have for you is, what are you most proud of that you actually stand for?
I'm going to be really cliched here, and that is
Hmm.
my family.
Fair enough.
Um, I have an amazing wife who we've grown together over nearly 50 years.
Mhm.
I have two amazing adult kids who are two of the bravest, wonderful people I've ever known, and my grandkids. And yeah, that's if that's my legacy, then I genuinely feel that I've contributed what I contributed. I mean, that is the most priceless thing that I feel I've achieved in my life. Yeah.
I like
Hmm.
that. But here's another one for you. What is the best advice you have ever received from somebody?
I'm going to quote it.
Go for it.
It's in my book. This came from a good friend of mine called Tom, who
Yes.
sadly passed. But he's definitely probably number three on my list of most influential people after Paulo Coelho. And so Tom said this to me, and I quote it in my book. He said that the greatest challenge we face is to truly believe at the very
Yes.
core of our heart that we're loved unconditionally for who we are and not for what we can do.
I had that on my list.
That was Tom. So I didn't particularly put Tom's name there because I sort of paraphrased it a bit. But yeah, he said that to me in my mid 20s, and I took the challenge, and I thought he's absolutely right. That is the hardest thing I've got to do in my life is to love myself. If I can just work out how to do that, then I probably that's the key to unlocking a happy and fulfilled life. Yeah.
I only have two more for you.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I've loved the conversation. It's been so natural, and I think that's the best thing about doing a podcast is when you get a guest to come on your show and they just talk, and it's natural, and you can just have that connection regardless. So I thank you even before the podcast is finished. But my second to last question for you is, I know we spoke about times where it's been really hard for you,
Mm.
and you've come out from, as you say, the black into the white into the red, and I think that's so important for listeners to understand and grasp. Do you have any other advice for listeners who may feel that they haven't got the support mechanism behind them? For instance, they might be like me where they started with
Mm.
nothing. What advice would you give them to tell them to keep going, keep pushing
Yeah.
on, and because there is opportunities and there is evolvement out there for them so they can evolve to be a beautiful person? What would you say to
Really easy. Believe in yourself against the odds. When everything else says you can't,
them?
just repeat to yourself, I can, I can, I can. And when you do that, the universe will send the help you need. You were telling me a story earlier, so that you actually said that um, when you needed something, a friend gave you what you needed, and that changed your life. Well, that happened because, Savi, you didn't give up. You did believe in yourself and your dream of what you wanted to do. And when you do that, the universe will bring the help we need. And the universe always looks at our intent, our resolve. So the more
Yeah.
you can harden your resolve to do the things and to live the dream that you want to live, then it will happen. It will, and you must tell yourself it will. It is going to happen, and ignore all of the other doubts and fears and contrary things. And it doesn't matter how old you are, even if you're a teenager or a young adult or my age. It doesn't matter. It will happen. I've never not seen it happen when somebody has that resolve and that intent. So believe in yourself, and the universe will send you what you need to help make that happen.
Thank you so much for saying that. And the funny thing is, I wish that people could see the videos as well, because when they get it speaking, when it's coming from the heart.
Bless you. Yeah, let's hope they can hear it as well. So
Yeah, most definitely. My final question for you is, where can people find you if they would like to get in contact with you, if they would like to talk to you about your book more on all your social medias? Where can we find you?
yeah, I'm not on. Was it TikTok? Oh, what is it? What's it called?
No, you said it right. It's just that I was so surprised that you said, "I'm not on
It's my
TikTok."
next thing to do. It's on my list. I'm on every.
Okay, right. I'm gonna add you, and
Okay,
when you're on
I'll
TikTok,
send
let
you.
me know.
I'll tell you. I'm okay. So I'm going to. It's on my list to do.
Okay, right.
But I'm everywhere else. So you can Colm Holland, COLM Holland .com. You Google me, Colm Holland. I'm all over Google. There's not many Colm Holland, so I'm quite fortunate in that regard. I'm on Facebook, Colm Holland page. You'll find me there. There's a contact form on my website. You can find me there. I'm on Instagram. You can message me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Yeah, I'm all those places. So I love to hear from people. If I can help, I will help as well. So if there's something if I can't help, I'll definitely try and point you in the right direction, to somebody who is probably maybe even better equipped than me to help. So,
Colin, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Yes People podcast.
the pleasure is all mine. You're a wonderful, wonderful host. Thank you for making me feel so comfortable.
Oh no, you're most welcome. You are
All your
most.
positivity is amazing, and sending you blessings for all your work, all that you do in your life. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you, and guys, thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Oh, please remember you can subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and any other platform that you prefer listening to. Please also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can also donate to the Yes People podcast so we can continue to speak to beautiful people like Colm here, who will give you spiritual advice and natural advice so you can evolve yourself. All you need to do is go on the Savvy Rocks website or just simply type in paypal.me/Us People podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Stay happy, stay positive, and as always, please continue to be kind to one another.
Oh, you're a pleasure to talk to. You just one of those people who I can see why you get people to open up. You just do it. You've got this thing going on, this magic thing, and then you got this thing that makes people just talk.